Good morning, everyone. It's TB Shores. It's March 23rd. I don't know just what time it is, but it's kind of early morning here. I wanted to hopefully make a short video about these things that I introduced in the last video. And I don't think I explained exactly what I had in front of me on this card. These are just things that the Lord has spoken to me over a period of time. He spoke these at different times that I feel pertain to what many of us are talking about right now, the Passover and the resurrection and the catching away of the bride. Okay, let's start with this first one that I already covered in the last video. Okay, the Lord spoke this to me at a time when I was really having a hard time understanding exactly what he was meaning here. I had an idea, but until recently, just like in my last video, it never really hit me. And that's the same case with these. I knew these pertained to resurrection. I knew this one pertained to the springtime, and of course resurrection is in the springtime, but it was like they always were just kind of hanging in the back of my mind because I never really had clarity on why the Lord had spoke it to me. And I understood when the Lord spoke this to me, for instance, resurrection. Then there was a distinct pause. And then he continued with, the children will rise. Well, I knew that had to do with the resurrection and the rapture, so to speak, the catching away. But I wasn't sure why God was giving it to me. Okay? But I see, how am I trying to explain it? The Lord gives us things. And that with time, as the time nears for us to have understanding, then we gain that understanding. But he gives these things to us so that we have them in our mind and recognize when they apply, I guess is the best way to put it. And all these are just some of the things the Lord has spoken to me over the last 3 years. But these are things I feel apply to now. And that's why I'm bringing them up. Now, we know when we speak of the resurrection, we first apply that to the resurrection of Christ. But we also know that the Bible tells us that the dead will rise first. And that's a resurrection. And he spoke to me, resurrection, the children will rise. So I did kind of understand we were talking about a time of resurrection, that the children would rise. And that was kind of understood, but I didn't know why the Lord was telling me that. But now it makes sense because we're all seeing, or many of us, I shouldn't say all, many of us are seeing that the Lord is pointing us to Passover. I believe resurrection is in reference to the catching away, as well as the resurrection of Christ, how that the Lord has shown me that through the events of the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, there is a timeline that applies to when the bride is taken and what how would you say, how things apply to the bride during this timeline that he's given here. And most of you remember that this was about how God had shown me through the death, burial, and resurrection, the 3-day event, and how it applied to the 3 days of darkness, and how he had given me this timeline and how all these other things fit into this timeline. about the physical darkness and the spiritual darkness, how it coincides with things we see in Exodus and with the wise virgins, as well as the awakening, how the events will be an awakening and there's going to be a great harvest. But the main thing I want to point out right now is how the Lord speaks to us and then gives us understanding later on as we see how it applies. So I clearly see now how this applies to the time that we are in. And then where the Lord spoke to me, when the children rise. Well, he had already spoke to me, resurrection. The children will rise. And then he spoke to me, when the children rise. So, of course, I knew instantly that was referring to the resurrection. But again, I wasn't sure why the Lord was telling me this. And then on another date, the Lord spoke to me just the word resurrection. And I clearly understand the resurrection of Christ. I understand that the catching away and the raising of the dead, when he comes for us, is all about a resurrection. But at the time, it was not clicking in my mind, and I don't think it was supposed to at the time. But I think these are things the Lord spoke to me over time that would be something that I could look back upon and recall and see that he was all along. He was pointing me in this direction. And these are confirmations. Each one is a confirmation of the other. And what I have understood that he's telling me now about the time of the death, burial, and resurrection, which is the time of Passover, as we see, as we looked at the dates of Nisan. And I feel this just further proves that the Lord was pointing what he was showing me in that direction the whole time. But a course of things had to be shown to me for me to clearly understand why he had given these things to me, because I didn't understand the why. But now look back on it, how he's shown me how Passover is clearly the time for the bride, and it makes perfect sense how all this applies to the bride. Now, some people may look at this as he's talking about just the children, and it very well may be. He's not revealed that to me, but then, no one is given all the puzzle. We all see in part, okay? But one other thing I wanted to mention right here, the last one, where it says, when the blossoms come forth. Now, I remember when the Lord gave me this, I had specifically asked him, could we know the season of when we would go, when he would come for us? And this is what I got, when the blossoms come forth. And of course, we know that applies to springtime. And that's usually late March and in April. So I just wanted to share that with you, just to show you that, all along the Lord shows us signs until he gets us to where he wants us and gives us full understanding. And I think this is just more confirmation that he's been showing us these things all along, and it's all coming together right now. Anyway, I want to share that with you right quick, and then I'm going to move on. All right. I will get back into, let's see, I'm not sure at the moment just what, but I'll be back with another video, hopefully not too long. I love y'all. Bye-bye.